Hello, this is Misty Ralston. I'm here with Amy. I'm going to go ahead and let Amy introduce herself a little bit and get started with our presentation today. I want to thank everybody for attending. She's going to get started with our water safety portion of the presentation and what we need to know in order to protect our kids with Memorial Day right around the corner. Pools will start to get open, and we want to make sure the kids are safe and secure and everyone feels comfortable with the kids swimming. So Amy, if you want to go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself, and then you can go ahead and get started.
Great, thank you. My name is Amy Boucher. I am a water safety professional. I've worked in the industry since I was 15 years old. I am a health and safety instructor for the Red Cross and the American Heart Association, and have held different certifications there. We are focusing on water safety this month. May is National Water Safety Month. May 15th was just International Water Safety Day. And one of the things that we really wanted to communicate with individuals is why we talk about this and why it has a designated month and day from which to draw attention. Drowning is fast, drowning is silent, and we need to really pay attention to our kids and our families when we're around the water. I can tell from, first person experience, I am no fun whatsoever around the water. My kids started swim lessons when they were infants. I am a Girl Scout leader, and my troop actually had asked if they could spend a day at the beach, and I said no. I am very, very vigilant. It makes my family crazy. I am absolutely no fun whatsoever, because unfortunately a big part of my job is the reason why we go through the training that we do and what happens when we don't. A big part of my job for a long time was actually watching a video that a family had permitted to be utilized as a part of training curriculum of a little boy who actually drowned in a fully staffed facility. And I watched that video hundreds of times in trainings, and I can be very honest when I say that every time I watched that video, I wanted it to be different. I wanted somebody to see him when he went underwater. I wanted somebody to get him out. And of course, it was a video, it wasn't live, and the result didn't change, but that didn't stop me from wanting it to change. So it's something that is ingrained in me and everything that I do when I am around the water. The training itself, as far as, that first responder care, we think of first responders, we think of police, fire, and ambulance, but it really is the person who recognizes and responds to an emergency. And that training is available. There is a shortage in trained water safety individuals. There has been a national lifeguarding shortage that I personally have experienced since about 2016 in a really serious way, but it's been going on for a long time. And there is training that is available, and it's incredibly gratifying to follow up on. One of the lifeguards that I had trained didn't work for me, but she wasn't around water even. She was at a Phillies game and someone choked on a hot dog. And in her section, someone yelled, does anyone know CPR, know what to do? And she looked at her mom and she said, I know what to do. And she actually went down and gave abdominal thrusts and saved that individual's life. And they reached back out to me and they said it was because of her training as a lifeguard that she knew what to do. And someone is alive today because of that information. And she probably wasn't more than 17 tops when that experience happened. So, it's something that with enough ambition, everyone can learn. So that just went too far. Sorry, that presentation just went way faster than it was supposed to. So we had originally started looking to do this seminar several weeks ago, and unfortunately we did reschedule and have to go virtual, but we did a quick Google search just from that week. And these are live links. 4-year-old dead, twin in critical condition, person found dead at a hotel pool. 3-year-old in critical condition found at the bottom of a pool. 5-year-old dies in a pool at home. Tampa Bay Bucks, 2-year-old daughter drowns in the swimming pool. And these are all live links, and we can go to, you should be able to go to those stories And that didn't take a lot of research. That was really just looking up the news of the day and what was, excuse me while my presentation here goes back. But that was just what was immediately available. This was a 60-second Google search to see these headlines. So it's not something that you have to look far for. They are unfortunately common and they are preventable. So some quick statistics is swimming is the 4th most popular recreational activity among youth 7 to 17. 10 million residential pools, 250,000 public pools, 5,000 miles of beach, thousands of public and private river and lakefront campgrounds and rec areas. That's a lot of water. That's a lot of opportunity, and it's an enjoyable hobby for people. And statistically, that puts us more at risk. So we hear the word drowning brought up a lot. Drowning is what happens when a person is submerged in liquid, inhales the water, and cannot breathe air. Signs of drowning happen immediately. There's trouble breathing, excessive coughing, foam in the mouth. Difficulty breathing may resolve, but then can progressively get worse. And that can be hours after trouble in the water. So these are things that we need to recognize and, to the best of our ability, prevent. We average 5,000 people die due to unintentional or intentional drownings. That's 14 deaths a day. 8,000 non-fatal drowning ER visits annually in the United States. Many will have outcomes such as long-term disability or brain damage. And it is the leading cause of unintentional death in kids 1 to 4, second leading cause in youth 5 to 19. We typically default to pools, but under the age of 1, tubs are a big part of that. And then ponds and lakes in our older kids. So there's simply a lot of risk that's around. This is a link to a video called Not on Your Watch. And this was something that we had planned to show in person. It is a little bit lengthy, so it's not something that I am going to show today. It is able to be Googled. It is on YouTube. And it's called Not on Your Watch, and it's part of the lifeguard management training through the Red Cross. And it details a young man who was about 13 years old. He was a strong swimmer. We tend to think of our weaker swimmers, our younger kids, that are more at risk. But this young man was a stellar athlete and was the victim of a drowning at 13 years old. So, it's a reminder that this is our strong swimmers. These are our capable kids, our athletes. No one is immune to the potential for injury in the water. So there are 3 types of victims that we learn about when we do lifeguard training. There's our distressed swimmer and our active and passive drowning victims. Our distressed swimmers look like they're swimming. They have coordinated movement. They're just not going anywhere. They can probably call out for help. But our active drowning victim, what we typically imagine when we look at TV or movies, is a very loud, very obvious victim, a lot of splashing, a lot of hollering. That's really not the case. They are vertical in the water, likely no supporting kick. There might be some hand movement briefly, but it's quiet and it's fast. And then a passive drowning victim is someone face up or face down at or under the surface. And they are typically unresponsive. So then that leads us to wonder, why is it happening? So there are 3 reasons that this can happen. We learned the RID factor: recognition, intrusion, and distraction. Recognition is when we fail to recognize the emergency. We don't know what we're looking at. Intrusion and distraction, for home pools in particular, can overlap some. On the job, intrusion could be secondary responsibilities. A lifeguard on the job is often tasked with other things like testing water chemistry or doing maintenance, dealing with members of the public, and that's intruding on their ability to recognize and respond. And then distraction is something that is very, very easy when we're simply distracted. How many of us are on our phones because we have to be, things for our jobs, scheduling our families' calendars. And it doesn't take long for that distraction to become a threat to our loved ones. So Individuals can become less vigilant after only 15 minutes. Significant reduction in alertness occurs after a half an hour. I can tell you, I was on a guard stand for a little over 3 hours yesterday morning. It was hot, and I didn't move at all. I was on an uncomfortable guard stand, and you start focusing more on your stiff back and moving your legs when your feet are falling asleep. And it's difficult to stay focused on watching people. And you really have to make it a conscious effort where you're not zoning out. And it's very, very challenging to do. When we're talking about intrusion and distraction, it could be watching other children. I have 2 kids. So if one is requiring my attention, that means that the other one is not getting my attention. When you're outside, you start looking at things, I got to get those leaves out of the flower bed, or the dog's running around and the gate's open. And we listed on there every other thing, squirrel, if we've heard the phrase, when we get squirreled, when we get distracted by something as simple as a squirrel. Everything in life, our lives move so fast, so much of it is happening simultaneously, and we really need to focus our attention on the water and the people that are in it. So there is a chain of drowning survival. We can recognize the signs. We can rescue and remove. We can call 911 and then begin CPR and use a defibrillator if we have one that is available to us. We also need that circle of drowning prevention, close and constant attention. I have to say that even when there's lifeguards on duty or a lot of adults, that can really create a false sense of security. I recently was with a bunch of moms, and they were talking about bringing their kids to a public pool. And they said, it's so great. We have all these babysitters. And my stomach nodded, because that is absolutely not the case. As I mentioned, there is a shortage in lifeguards. And that means that pools are doing everything that they can to appropriately staff a facility, but there could be a high ratio of swimmers to trained guards. They're not babysitters. They are there to seek out potential hazards, try and remove those hazards, and then recognize and respond. Parents are really responsible for making sure that their children are close and they're making good choices. The more adults, the more at risk we can be, because we assume everybody else is watching. I always make sure that when we're with family or something, that we have designated 2 to 1, so no more than 2 kids per 1 adult, and that 1 adult is tasked with keeping eyes on those kids in the water. Like I said, I'm not very popular for that, but I know what consequences can happen and how quickly those consequences do occur. So that is a hard and fast rule of mine. Fencing is really important. A lot of newer pools are installed and fences are immediately put around. Too many instances of kids that are quickly finding themselves outside and they fall in. So denying that kind of access can be really important. Teaching them those survival skills, and making sure that our kids are trained, they are comfortable in the water, they have swim lessons from a young age. PFDs, or personal flotation devices, or life vests or life jackets, are important. Any kind of boating, no matter how strong a swimmer or how seasoned someone is, everyone should have on a PFD. And then again, swimming in those lifeguarded areas. Going back to what circumstances can occur with younger children, we see bathtubs, installing locks on toilet seats and bathroom doors. It seems overkill, but it only takes a couple inches of water and an unmonitored child for there to be a tragedy. Emptying all buckets of liquid, installing a safety cover, and then removing or restricting access to ladders. So when you are winterizing your facilities at home, to make sure that we are keeping people as safe as possible. This isn't just our kids. Locking pet doors if they're open to a pool area. If we have kiddie pools in the backyard, emptying them, flipping them, and then designating that water watcher, making sure that there's someone who is purposefully tasked to keep people safe. So we want to pay close attention to the swim area. What is the water depth? It doesn't take much, even in wading pools, it can still be a hazard. Are there underwater hazards that are around? Are we monitoring quality and clarity of the water? What's the temperature? Is there moving water? Are we aware of the moving water? When we have non-tidal areas like lakes, we tend to be a little bit more confident that there isn't going to be things like undertow or rip currents. But having spent a lot of time around cedar water in my life, it can move, and it can move fast, and there can be hazards and things that just because we can't see doesn't mean it isn't there. So talking about what we can wear can make a difference. So we have a few pictures here of different swim garments. Obviously, the two swimsuits on the left side blend in with the color of the water, where the two on the right are going to be a lot more evident. One of the things that we do in lifeguard training is a brick test, where we have to throw in a dive brick, weighs 10 pounds, then our lifeguards are timed and how quickly they can enter the water, approach, complete a surface dive, bring the brick to the surface and swim it back. And one of the big challenges that we have when we're doing that training is often that dive brick will blend in with the bottom of the pool. And the same thing goes for people. So that brightly colored swimsuit can actually be a huge help to individuals that are watching. When it comes to those life jackets, like we said, we always want to wear one while boating. But they all might work a little bit differently. Some rotate people face up, some don't. We want to make sure that infants and toddlers have one with a collar for head support and the strap between the legs. Also, we want to make sure that we're utilizing those amenities. Just because we have them doesn't mean they're going to work if we are not making sure that they fit and are worn the way that they are supposed to be worn. So there's different shapes, sizes, and colors. We want to make sure that the infant is wearing it by weight and that you're wearing one properly sized. You don't buy a life jacket to grow into. It's not like it's a pair of sneakers. You make the investment. One of the things that I was always very conscious of with my kids and my family was seeing relatives, very well-meaning, putting their kids in life jackets that were coming up into their throat and their neck. And that's not what they're for. We need to make sure that they fit the way that they're supposed to. So we want to try them on. We want to make sure that it's not going to go around the face, but big enough that it's going to keep us afloat, zipped and or buckled, making sure that we're checking the fit, and then no excess room above the arm and neck openings. So we talked several times about anyone participating in boating, including paddling and other activities, regardless of your swimming ability. If you fall and you hit your head on a gunnel, your swimming ability is not going to factor in. As a scout leader and someone that's worked a fair share of waterfront areas, having our inexperienced swimmers even if it's just waiting areas or a place where they can touch in a moment of panic, having the ability to get your feet under you and stand up is not always something that we see. So making sure that we are adding those layers of protection becomes really important. Preschool kids, 5 years and younger, not protected by touch, either in or near the water. Touch supervision being within arm's reach at all times. So if you're not within arm's reach, and you should, but if you're not, that PFD really needs to come into play. So if you do recognize, we have to learn how to respond. So a good adage is reach, throw, row, go. The first thing that we want to try and do is reach. Can we reach and have that physical hand-to-hand response, where if the individual lets go, you still have a hand on them. If you can't reach, do you have the ability to throw? Can you throw something out to them? A lot of facilities will have ring buoys or rescue tubes. They are brightly colored. You want to be able to speak loudly and clearly to make sure that they know exactly what you want them to do. It's a big part of our training, is we're making sure that we can be heard above all of the ambient noises that are occurring, so that the person in trouble knows exactly what we need and how we can keep them safe. If I can't reach or throw, we want to row if we're in a lakefront area. And then finally, we want to go. That is actually one of the more riskier options, because we are further at risk. And then we do want to be careful about flotation devices that can provide false confidences. We tend to think, well, my kid has a life jacket on, they're probably fine. You still want to make sure you have those water watchers. You want to have those kids within arm's reach, and you want to make sure that that's a priority the entire time that they're in the water. Water competency is being able to anticipate and survive common drowning situations. So water smarts and skills, helping others and avoiding common hazards can all come into play for water competence. Swimming lessons are obviously a huge element to that. We want to make sure that it's an appropriate lesson because not all lessons are created equal. Appropriate student-teacher ratios, 1 to 4, no more than 1 to 6 is ideal. Focused by age and ability, with and without a caregiver, and it depends on your source. I went through a lot of different sources in putting this presentation together. We used the Red Cross. We used a couple other ones that use the Red Cross and the American Heart Association together. And some focused on lessons with a caregiver and some focused on lessons without. And there were some conflicting opinions, and I think that often can depend on the demographic. I have seen some parents that were absolutely terrified of the water, and that transferred to the kids. And I have had some loved ones where I specifically said that kid needs to be in a lesson without his parent because his parent is going to transfer some of that anxiety. And they watched from a kitchen window. And then some with a caregiver where the caregiver is learning in tandem. So conflicting arguments don't necessarily mean that one is right or wrong. It's about what's best for the individual. We want to make sure that those swimming lessons are inclusive and professional. Then we have junior lifeguarding and lifeguarding certifications. Our lifeguarding cert for the Red Cross in particular is age 15 and up, but junior lifeguarding opportunities exist where those middle schoolers have the ability to gain that foundation in water safety, and they're that much more prepared for the lifeguarding course when it comes up. As a lifeguarding instructor, I don't get a lot of junior lifeguards, but the difference is clear when an individual has had that training and then hits that 15th birthday and it's time to move on. So we had a couple sheets that I don't have. I could actually send those to Misty and we can get them posted. Safety barrier guidelines, emergency contact information, and home pool safety checklist. So these are some things that homeowners can keep handy to learn what can I do based on what I have at my residence. What kind of pool do I have? Is it in ground? Is it above ground? What kind of fencing do I have? What kind of tools or equipment might be on my property? What kind of access do my neighbors have? How can I keep this the safest possible location? We want to make sure that our loved ones know that it's not just someone's swimming ability. It's not just what they wear. It really is a team effort. We don't want to apply that diffusion of responsibility. We don't want to assume that someone else is taking care of it. We want to make sure that we're all in on it together, that we're all accepting an equal amount of responsibility. Sometimes we can control our surroundings and sometimes we can't. So in those instances where we can't control our surroundings, we want to make informed choices on where we are, where we allow our families to be, assessing those risks and moving forward from there. A lot of individuals talk about some things that they can do in their homes without really knowing what some of it entails. The Poseidon drowning detection system, I hear come up fairly often, which is an amazing opportunity where it detects larger objects at the bottom of the pool. Again, another part of training is scanning the bottom of the pool as much as the surface, which for most individuals don't think to do. And Poseidon actually does some of that job for us. Poseidon is, however, rarely residential. That system can start at about $150,000. So it's normally not something that is for a home pool. But it might be something that, we're more aware of when we're making those informed choices. We want to make sure that we're creating that pipeline, that we want to get kids used to the water, make sure that they are gaining that familiarity and they are comfortable, and then starting with those skills to keep their mouth and nose above the water, learning those stroke mechanics and gaining that strength so that they can be their own best advocate as well. And then they can continue to pass along that information as they grow, joining those junior lifeguarding courses, getting certified as lifeguards, and passing it along to the next generation. So, Misty, do you have anything that you'd like to add, or any questions that you'd like to pose in advance of that information?
That was great. It's funny, or ironic, I should say. I was at an event, I want to say about probably 6 or 7 years ago, where it was a barbecue and an event, and everyone has the idea that everyone else is watching the kids. And one of the kids, I think he was maybe 4 or 5 at the time, doesn't like to swim. The mom and dad kept saying he doesn't like to swim, he doesn't like the water, he doesn't like the water. All the kids had come out of the water to eat, and that's when this little one decides to jump into the water. And luckily there were enough people who saw it and ran, but it's scary because as much as this kid's been saying for 5 years he doesn't want to go anywhere near the water, he makes the decision out of the blue, okay, I'll give this a shot, not realizing the danger.
Yeah. I had a similar experience just a few weeks ago. I'm a Boy Scout merit badge counselor, and I was doing a BSA swim test for a troop heading to camp. And I had a young man, he's awesome, I adore him. And for the past couple of years, he's very, very anxious, and he can swim and he can do it. And it's that initial fear of jumping in. And I worked with him quite a bit last year, and he got there and he was fine. But he was with his troop and parents, and it was just a crowd. And I was testing them in groups of 3 and 4, and I was not expecting him to jump in with his peers. And I was waiting for him to gather his courage a little bit. And I figured it was going to be me and him one-on-one, almost after hours at that point. And I was focusing my attention on another scout. And I heard a splash and my stomach knotted. And I looked, and there's my guy, and he jumped in and he started a stroke. And I cheered. I almost cried a little bit because I was so proud of him, because I knew what it took for him to enter the water. But it's such a reminder. I've been doing this my entire adult life and quite a bit of my youth. And I turned my back on him because I made the assumption that he was not going to jump in given his history. And darn it if he didn't jump in and start swimming. And his mom was excited, and his scout leader was excited, and I was excited, and it was not expected of him in that moment, in that capacity. And he did amazing, and he passed as a swimmer, and hopefully he had a wonderful time at camp that weekend. But it is a reminder that someone's prior habits are not indicative of the choices that they're going to make that day.
Yeah. And kids do stupid things. I have a friend who, he's in his 50s now. But he can remember when he was a kid playing with his 2 older brothers that they used to play, let's see how long we can hold our breath under the water. And his one brother actually lost consciousness, and they had to, police come and had to give him CPR and everything like that. And I said, well, you never did that again. And he goes, oh yeah, we just never told my mom we did it again. Right. And I was like, you saw what happened. Right. And he's like, we're boys, we're kids, we're stupid,
right. That's actually, it was a phenomenon that we used to call shallow water blackout, and it's called hypoxic blackout now. And it's something that's still encouraged by some instructors and coaches. We actually have a rule and a standard that should be universal is 1 breath, 1 time, 1 length, and then not really forcing it beyond that, because that can very, very unexpectedly end in tragedy.
And they were in their backyard, just playing. So, right. But thank you so much, Amy. This was great. I appreciate you coming and doing this with us. And I apologize that we weren't able to do it live, but I am going to be putting this on my website. I'm going to be sending you the recording to be able to send to parents, and hopefully we can get this knowledge out to everybody.
And I will also send you some of the handouts that
Great.
I had. And I did want to mention some of my sources to make sure that I am citing appropriately. We did reference Water Safety USA, the U.S. National Water Safety Action Plan, and of course the American Red Cross, for whom I have been an instructor for a long time. But like I had mentioned, we just want to make sure that everybody absorbs that responsibility. We never make those assumptions that someone is watching, someone is or isn't going to make a choice in any direction. And not to be the fun person around the water, because the fun people around the water are not necessarily the ones that are keeping everyone safe. So be quick to be the unpopular caregiver that day at the water.
Great. Thank you so much. I do appreciate that.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate the invitation.
You take care now.
You too.
We're going to move on to the second portion of our presentation, which is choosing guardians for your children. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Just a second. There we go. Perfect. I think you guys can see this. And hopefully you can. Okay. So my name is Misty Ralston. I am an attorney here in Gloucester County. I am a personal family lawyer law firm. I am one of 500 law firms across the country. And our goal is to be what your personal doctor is to you from the legal side. My legal expertise does include family law. I worked in the court system for about 7 years as a child support hearing officer, a law clerk, a mediator, and a domestic violence hearing officer. I loved working with families. And when I decided I wanted to open my own practice, I wanted to try and do some of the happier and more fun things that families can deal with. Divorce, child support, domestic violence are not happy times. And while estate planning is not a happy time, it's a way that I can feel like I'm protecting the families and helping the families. And I still get to hear about their children, their grandchildren, their nieces, their nephews, young children starting out on their own. And I like the fact that I can do an individual plan, that I have a group of 500 other firms across the country, that when my clients move, I can send them to another firm that I know is going to take care of them the way that I would want them to be taken care of. So today we're going to talk about 6 common mistakes that most parents and some lawyers make when naming guardians. The first mistake is naming a couple to act as guardians when you don't want both people in the couple to technically be the guardian. I know a lot of people have godparents, and it's like, I'm naming my sister and her husband. I'm naming my brother and his wife. But if something were to happen, you necessarily wouldn't want your brother's wife raising your child if something happened to your brother. You would want to go to your sister and her husband. Or 2 close friends. Maybe you have 2 close friends that live nearby that have been in your kids' lives since they were born, whereas your family is 3,000 miles away in California. And you don't want to see your children uprooted from all their friends and schools and stuff like that. But again, you don't want to just name a couple, you want to name a person. And then if you want the couple, then name the second person as the next person. That would be the guardian. And with that comes mistake number 2. I have a 3 name rule. I always tell people, call it the power of 3 if you watch Charmed or what have you, but I try to have 1 person in the primary spot and 2 backups. Because what happens if your first choice isn't available? What happens if that person happens to be in the hospital at that point? What are you going to do then? So it's very important that you have some people that you can have as backups. If one person isn't available, there's someone else always there to help take care of your children. You also want to consider any financial resources. I always tell my clients, just because Jenny and John, or John and Mike, or Jenny and Judith are going to be raising the children doesn't mean that they have to have financial decision either. Maybe you want to split it up. Someone from mom's side of the family is going to be guardian. Someone from dad's side is going to handle the finances, or vice versa. Dad's parents are going to take over raising the children, having custody. Mom's family, excuse me. Mom's family is going to go ahead and have the finances. This keeps both families and encourages both families to stay in the child's life or the children's lives, but at the same time, doesn't put all the pressure on one set or one group of people. And it can a lot of times reduce conflict because everybody has a say in the children's lives. Everyone is stepping up. We say it takes a village, and that's true. So share the responsibility, share the wealth, or share the torture, if you want to call it that. But it does not have to be all in one person's hands. Only having a will does mean that you're going to go to probate. In New Jersey, our probate system is not as complicated as other states, and we're lucky from that. However, if you don't have something in your will or a trust set up, then that money is going to go into the state's account until the child turns 18. And then they're going to get that money in a lump sum at 18. You may not want your 18-year-old child to get a $100,000 life insurance policy that you left behind. They may want to take all their friends to see the Eagles play in the Super Bowl, or to go to the Taylor Swift concert. I know what I was like at 18. I wish I had been smarter with my money. And I know that most 18-year-olds may not be ready to have a huge influx of money. And a lot of times those life insurance policies that we have at work that are 1, 2, 3 times our salaries that we really don't think about, that would go to your children, is something to consider. So you want to make sure that you have those assets in a way that you want it to be taken care of, whether it's given to them at different periods of their life, whether it is stays in a trust, and how that money will be used. Mistake number 5. Mistake number 5 is a tough one. A lot of people will have someone in their life that they love, that they care about, but they wouldn't want to be caring for their children. Maybe they have an addiction issue. Maybe they have a special need of their own. Maybe they've stated that they don't want to raise anyone's children. You want to make sure you have something in writing excluding them from being able to be a guardian to your children or caring for your children. Now, that's not to say that it'll be the final say. Someone may go to court wanting to get custody, and you, for whatever reason, have said, I don't want this. Excuse me. Allergies, I apologize. You may try to exclude someone, because remember, you're nominating your guardians. But if you have a letter and you have something stating the reasons in a non-emotional way, just a fact-based way, then that can be taken in by the people that you have wanted to be named as guardians in case of a court dispute. And it becomes something that can be considered by the courts. So don't be afraid to exclude those people. I've had people who just said they're too old and I wouldn't want to put that on them. I've had people who have said they live too far away, they travel too much, they wouldn't be around. There are a lot of reasons why people make that decision. And we can do that in a caring and loving way. And just making sure that everyone knows what you believe is in the best interest of your children. Mistake number 6 is something a lot of people don't think about. And that's when you are a family that's moved away from your immediate family. You went to college and you ended up staying where you went to college, marrying someone from that area, and you stay. And your family, or you moved for a job, and your family is 4, 5, 6 hours away. But if something happens, you want them to take care of your children. You need, at that point, to name short-term guardians. What happens if the two of you are out for date night and you're in a car accident and you're in the emergency room and you have no way of calling? You're unconscious, you're being taken care of by the doctors, and the 16-year-old babysitter is trying to call you. No one is answering. She doesn't know what to do. He doesn't know what to do. Most likely that person, they're 16, 15, 17 years old, they're going to call their parents and say, I don't know what to do. It's 2 o'clock in the morning and so-and-so's not home. We don't want them to call the police. We don't want the kids to become and taken by the police and put in foster care because they don't know what's going on with mom and dad, or mom or dad, whoever's taking care of raising these children. So if you have a short-term and long-term guardian, those short-term guardians can be contacted by the babysitter, by the person who is watching them, by the caregiver, and they can be called and said, hey, listen, I have you on the list. I haven't heard from Mary and Jane. I haven't heard from Jack and Jill. They went out today. Could you please come and pick them up? Pick up the kids, or can you come and stay with the kids? I need to leave. And these short-term guardians are people that are, your children know, they feel comfortable with. They're going to come and get the kids, and then they can start making the phone calls, calling the police, calling the hospitals, finding out what happened, where you might be. But at this point, your kids are safe. They're in the hands of someone that you love, that you know that loves your children, is going to take good care of them. So it's very important that we make sure that there are not just long-term guardians, but to make arrangements for the short term, for those few hours or days until those long-term guardians can get there. Okay. So if you've made any of these solutions, if you have made any of these mistakes, if you haven't done anything yet, we do have solutions. We will help you with our kids protection plan, which will allow you to name short-term and long-term guardians. We'll make sure you have a medical power of attorney, so that in the event that they're with your short-term guardian, they are with your caregiver, that you have them with all the time. Let's say your mom always watches your kids while you go to work, that they can get the care needed for your child when they're unable to reach you, or you're unable to get to the hospital in time, or the doctors in time, that there are instructions for each child. You know your child best, and there may be things that you want to let someone know, especially if they're going to be raising your child. So you really should be asking yourself two simple questions. What would happen to your children if something happened to you? That's your long-term, that's your short-term guardians. And would your loved ones have immediate and protected access to your money to make sure they continue to pay the mortgage, pay the bills, pay your kids' tuition, if they're in an after-school program, a before-school program, school trips, doctor appointments, prescriptions. There's a lot of things that kids need that we don't even automatically think about, that you really want to sit down and make sure you have written down for those who are taking care of your children, and make sure you have a plan that is going to protect your children when you're not there to protect them, whether it's because you're hurt or you've passed. Again, for the short term, your children could be taken out of the home, and we did discuss this, and we don't want that. Make sure that there is someone that your caregiver knows to contact. With our kids protection plan, we have a document. It's on cardstock. It has the front information about the child, the back, here's the people to call. And I tell people, hang this up in your refrigerator. Then I give them a regular blank copy. If they're dropping the kids off at mom or dad's, they're dropping the kids off at a friend's house, give it to them. You don't want to be at the mercy of the court to make those decisions. And you don't want them to be raised in a way that you may not agree with. You want those provisions in writing. Again, it's not a guarantee, unfortunately. Nobody can guarantee what will happen. But if you have something in writing and you've talked to your family, you've talked to your friends, and everyone knows the plan, you're going to, if it does go to court, there's someone there. You've left something behind to speak for you. And I think that's really important. Having worked in the judiciary, having seen the fights that go on, if we can avoid court and save that money for your children, that I think is the most beneficial thing you can do to your family. That is a gift that you can give that they may never even realize how precious it is, to not have to deal with somebody else making a decision for their lives. And the only thing that they know is what's been handed to them in a folder. Having that personalized kids protection plan allows you to have that first step. I was talking to another personal family lawyer here in South Jersey yesterday, and we were talking about our kids protection plan. And she was saying how she remembers the first time she was going away with her husband on a little mini vacation, and she dropped the kids off at her parents' house, and she gave them the folder, and it had all that information in there. And she said she felt like, and here's someone who does this for a living, how great she felt knowing that it was going to be fine. And that, mom called and said that her daughter had a fever, and she's like, you have the medical power of attorney, just take that to the doctor, she'll be fine. So even us, I do not have children, it's not something I have to worry about, but I am constantly on my own family to have this done. Kids are precious, and unfortunately we don't know what will happen. So protecting our kids, making sure that we've nominated guardians, that we have a plan, is the best planning that you can do. And I know that sounds a little bit silly, but you can either have a plan or not have a plan. And if you have a plan, that's great. You're set. If not, it's going to go to the state's plan. And that state's plan is kids going into foster care, going into the court system. And again, if we can avoid that, that can be longer and longer and longer with all the backlogs we have. If you can avoid that, why not? So what is the next step? If you are interested in learning more, please reach out to me. You can schedule a family wealth planning session at my website, ralstonlawestateplanning.com. I will send you some information. I'm going to ask you to go ahead and complete your homework. And then we would meet to customize a plan that's going to include your kids' protection plan. And that's going to fit the needs of you and your family. What's good for one person may not be good for someone else. We're going to make sure it is. And at the end, you're going to have peace of mind. You're going to know that you're set. And you're going to have a lifetime relationship with a personal family lawyer that's going to make sure that you come back on a regular basis to review those documents, make sure nothing has changed, and make sure that everything is going to work when you need it to work. So I'm going to leave this here for a minute. You can just click on this box, this QR code. It'll take you right to my website to schedule an appointment. And anyone that schedules an appointment with me after watching the video, you'll get your free wealth planning session. There will be no charge for that. It will be complimentary as long as you complete your homework. And I hope that you will reach out. I hope that you found this informative. Amy was wonderful. If nothing else, I hope that you came away with some great information on how to protect your family. I know I had read the article, and that's when I had reached out to Amy about doing this workshop. I had read an article about the colors of the bathing suits. And I always would buy my nieces and nephews bathing suits that, they look summery. They're blues and they're greens. And when I read the article saying, don't do that, I was shocked. So hopefully that you've learned some information as well as I have learned some information from Amy. Thank you for putting up with my voice. The allergies are killing me this time of the year. And I hope that you will schedule an appointment to sit down and get a plan in place. Even if we start with a foundational plan, just to make sure that your family is protected. I look forward to helping you, and have a wonderful summer. If you're watching this on video from my website or on Facebook, please give a shout out. Let me know that you've watched it, and I look forward to talking to you soon. Thank you so much, and you have a great day.